AI sucks at writing coherent text. A coherent piece does not merely have a beginning, middle, and end. Those parts have to match up. The things inside them have to feel stable. A line in the third paragraph has to belong to the same work as a line in the first. The argument, the tone, the pressure, the rhythm, all of it has to feel like it is being held together by the same mind. A coherent piece is not a sack of coat hangers. That is the thing AI text still has trouble with. It has a lot of faults, but it can generate a couple of paragraphs just fine. Utility text, too. Warnings, signs, basic paperwork, the relatively easy stuff. Need a stop sign. AI is there for you, but need to judge the relative merits of incentives and outcomes in a complex system, and you will tend to get back whatever you already believe. Short or long, the model often inherits the shape of the question. It favors the supportive reply, not necessarily because someone designed it to be sycophantic in that exact way, but because so much of its source material works like that. The internet is full of replies that are trying to satisfy the person who asked. Reddit especially has a habit of turning the prompt into the answer. The same thing happens to coherence. Source texts are not, in general, highly coherent. Most writing is fragmentary, reactive, interrupted, compromised, search-optimized, forum-shaped, platform-shaped, written under deadline, written to win an argument for 5 minutes, written to keep the reader from leaving. So the model does not have a clean instinct for long-form coherence, at least not in broad, generic models. It has seen coherent works, yes, but it has also seen a much larger quantity of text that is only locally successful. That is why AI can sound right for 2 paragraphs and then start to come apart. The first paragraph has an angle. The second paragraph develops it. Then the text starts accumulating obligations. It starts smoothing itself. It starts treating every hard choice as something to be balanced. It remembers a point but forgets why it mattered. It keeps the subject but loses the work. The usual answer is to add state, more memory, more retrieval, more context, more story bibles, more planning layers, more evaluators, more system. And some of this works, up to a point. It can stop the obvious breaks. It can keep names straight. It can stop a character's motive from changing every 3 pages. It can remind the model what the essay is supposed to be about. But state management has its own cost. The relaxed versions let platform pollution seep in. The story becomes about a user safely searching for something copyright cleared. Then someone tells them to be careful because maybe the bad guy has a point if you consider it from both angles. The strict versions solve that by making the text obey a clipboard. They preserve continuity by forcing the shape. The work becomes cleaner but weaker. This has something in common with BBC Balance. There is no balance, really. There are choices of compromise. Some compromises are necessary. Some are cowardly. Some are useful in a public broadcaster and disastrous in a scene, an essay, a joke, a polemic, a book. AI text often behaves as if balance is the morally safest shape, but writing is not the preservation of every possible interpretation. Writing is choosing what to throw away. That is where the coherence problem becomes bigger than bad prose. It changes the interface with reality. If a tool makes long-form thinking more expensive to produce than is economically acceptable, then long-form starts to die before the tool has learned how to make a good version of it. Not literally. Not nobody will ever buy a book again, but as a pattern, the complex thing becomes less available. The work that needs pressure over time becomes uneconomical. What remains is shorter, smoother, easier to approve, easier to generate, easier to rank, easier to forget. I do not want books to become artisanal objects like a $5,000 chair, or a real leather handbag stitched by slave kids that costs more than a family car. I like long form. I want it to keep being made. But even in myself, I can see context rot leaking beyond the page into the real world. The tool changes what you ask for. Then it changes what you expect. Then the market follows that shape, that money, until what is left of the complex and beautiful things we love is simply uneconomical. There is probably a technical version of the answer. Maybe you can get together enough long, coherent works to train a model that has a real instinct for long form. Maybe broad models are simply the wrong object. Maybe someone is already doing it, though they are probably looking for superintelligence instead of a video essay about AI that has the same argument at its end as at its beginning. More likely, at least soon, we start layering full LLMs into stacks and content pyramids. A champagne fountain of content. Models generating, ranking, checking, compressing, expanding, scoring themselves, and passing the result down to the next glass. That might work for some things. It might even work for many things. But the danger is that we mistake that for coherence because it produces fewer visible errors. A stack can make a piece more consistent while still draining the life out of it. It can make the prose less wrong and less worth reading. It can turn the work into a managed surface. The issue is not that AI is failing outright. These models get better every week. The long-term case for them is still positive. Incredible systems become possible in just a few years, especially as cycles become cheaper with the coming oversupply of data centers, assuming we survive the bubble pop. It is also understandable why everyone decided to put these tools out in the wild rather than lock them behind closed doors. They can do incredible things. But that is exactly the point. We need to remember that we want them to do incredible things. Not merely cheaper things. Not merely safer-looking things. Not merely text-shaped things that satisfy the prompt and then dissolve on rereading. We need to design for the cases where the work has to hold together. We need to understand the compromises and choose when to accept them and when we have to try harder. Because coherence is not a formatting problem. It is the feeling that the same piece of written text is still happening, that we as readers are on solid ground.